Hi, this is Amber Seay, and welcome to Ears Radio. Today we are just honored to have the great Rodney Lay, and you're going to want to stay for the entirety of this interview and hear all of this man's accomplishments. And we've got Frank Anderson to play some of his wonderful music. Hello, Rodney. How are you doing today?
Amber, I'm doing great outside of a bunch of Oklahoma ragweed allergies, which we're out here on the prairie, and about this time in the spring, it really hits us good. So I may sound kind of croaky, but I feel fine.
Well, I know we were talking before the interview, and I may sound that way a little bit too, so we'll be there together. I'm sure we're not the only ones suffering.
Well, you're down there in Texas, aren't you? Is that where you're at? You're down in Texas?
Down at the very tip of Texas, so...
Okay, well, I've been down there on South Padre Island. I've been across the border into Mexico, whatever that is, that Brownsville or something, into Mexico.
Matamoros is close.
Matamoros, that's right. Yeah, I've been there. And it's a beautiful country down there. Oh, sure. You bet. I love the ocean down there. It's great.
Yeah,
you bet.
So, I want to get to your story because you have so much to tell that it's going to be hard to even fit it into our little 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, you have accomplished so much over your career and your life. I guess let's start back with the Blazers or wherever you want to begin.
Okay, I tell you what, I was raised on a ranch in Kansas, and I remember as a kid laying in bed and listening to the Grand Ole Opry when I was about 10 years old. And I kept thinking, I got to get off this ranch. We had to work very hard. The kids worked hard. The teenagers worked hard. And it was just something I just wanted to do. And I know when I hit 20 years old, I told my dad I was going to Hollywood. And he said, "You're leaving the ranch?" I said, "Yes, I am." And so I went to Hollywood and starved to death. And then I came home, and he said, "Well, have you had enough?" I said, "Yeah, for a while." And I was home 2 or 3 months, and I said, "Dad, I'm going to New York City." He said, "Well, you've lost your mind." I said, "I probably have." So I went to New York City and, played a few clubs like I did in Hollywood, but didn't make enough money. And I came home, and he said, "Have you had enough?" I said, "Yeah, I think I've had enough this time." So I went to work at a radio station in Kansas, and I worked there about 6 years, and I said, "You know what? This is just not it." And I went in and I told my boss, I said, "I'm going to quit." He said, "Are you mad?" I said, No, I'm not mad at all. I just, I want to do something else. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I think I'm going to go down to Nashville and see what I can get going." So I went to Nashville, and I started writing songs, and I wrote a couple of basic, pretty good hit records. One was for Hank Thompson. It was called "He's Got Away with Women and He Just Got Away with Mine." And it went to number 16 on Billboard. And I remember buying a new pickup truck with the first check. I was thrilled to death with that. And then I wrote a song for Waylon Jennings called "Something's Wrong in California." And it went to 14 in the nation. I never made top 10, but I got close. And then I wrote songs for other people like Vern Gosdin and Susan Ray and the Hager Twins, just several other songs, but playing music all the time. And I got to where I started playing bass and backing up other stars. And I don't know, I went down the road backing up a lot of people. I was with Freddie Fender at the time he had his big hits. And then I got called and asked to play with Roy Clark a night, and I played that, and then he hired me. And I stayed with Roy for 20 years and did Hee Haw with him for 13 years. And Roy was, at that time, was a very big star. We went to, the Soviet Union, went to Europe, I think, 13 or 14 times, and played 49 of the 50 states, all over Central America, the Caribbean, all over Canada. Went to Hawaii and played, and the only state I haven't been in is Alaska. And it was, a good career. I got a chance to meet I met people that I never thought I would meet. I met 4 presidents. I met people like Bob Hope, Dean Martin, Lucille Ball, people like you wouldn't think you'd ever meet playing country music. And it was on and on like that. I met superheroes like Neil Armstrong that walked on the moon. I met Jimmy Doolittle, who was a World War I and II flying ace. He fought against the Red Baron and people like that. It was just amazing, who you meet,
Yeah.
But the main thing I got is I got to travel the world. I went behind the Iron Curtain a couple of times. I went to the Middle East. I saw how other people live. Mm-hmm. And anybody out there who's unhappy with America, all they need to do is just do a little traveling. They'll come home and kiss the ground. This country is wonderful. America is wonderful. Even at its worst, it's better than other countries. And it has really made me a true patriot. God bless America. This is what this is about, In fact, I've been still playing a lot. I was out on the West Coast 3 weeks ago, and then I just got back a couple of days ago from the East Coast. And I was doing a show in Virginia. And at the close of the show, we sang God Bless America and asked the crowd to join in. And I started singing that song, and I had to quit. I choked up because I got to thinking about how great this country is and how much we take it for granted and mistreat this country. And I couldn't get through the song. Of course, there was a lot of other people singing, and I just played bass. I just couldn't get through it.
Yeah, and, I understand that. I've had the same feeling before with it, and that's the truth.
You bet. You know what I mean.
Yes, I do. And was that with the Tulsa Playboys that you're still
No, I was working with some other people. I was working with Buck Trent, who used to be with Porter Wagner, and he was with Roy Clark. And then I worked with Lulu from Hee Haw. Worked with Janet J. Used to play fiddle for Buck Owens. And Misty Rowe was there. One of the girls, the Hee Haw Honey, she was there. And it was just a kind of a bluegrass, happy kind of show, Lots of fun. And but I do anything. I play with a band here in Tulsa called the Tulsa Playboys, and it's kind of a salute to Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys.
Which I would love to see that, because I love Bob
over the
Wills.
years, several of us got to play with the Texas Playboys. I remember the first time they called me to ask me to play bass for them. Their bass player couldn't make it or something, and Leon Roush called me and he said, "Would you play bass for me with the Texas Playboys?" I said, "Sure." And so we talked a little bit. He said, "Aren't you going to ask what it pays?" I said, "I don't care what it pays." He said, "What?" I said, "I'm getting to play with the Texas Playboys. What do I care what it pays? Who's going to remember how much I made when I did that?" He said, "I never heard that in my life." He said, "Everybody wants to know how much they're going to make." I said, "No, not me. I've never been like that." I said, "I learned a long time ago, if you ask what it pays, you really shouldn't even do it. In music, you've got to love music first of all, and more than anything else, more than the trouble it is to go do it and what you get paid to do it for. You have to really love music."
That's so true.
My dad played in a band. Now, he played in a band back in the days when they played in houses. They had square dances in houses. And then my granddad did the same thing. And my granddad said he used to ride horseback like 30 miles to a dance. And then he said I'd make $1, and he said then when I'd ride home, I'd tie my fiddle to the saddle horn and ride back home. And he said we'd get in at daylight and have to go start working on the ranch. I said, "Oh my goodness!"
That sounds like the life right there.
No, they were just. I came from just a family of cowboys and Indians. I've got I'm Cherokee too.
Same.
so it was. You got a Cherokee in you too, huh?
Cherokee, and my dad, cowboy and patriot.
There you go. Same stock, same blood stock right there, you know. And I know I read the history of my family, and my guys they're coming west in covered wagons out here, you know, and I had one great-great-grandfather that lived in Ohio, and in the gold rush, he left his home, his wife and kids. He said, I'm going to go out and try to find gold. And he took a team of mules and a wagon. Took him 6 months to get to California. He didn't find any gold, so he came home before wintertime hit, and took him 6 months home. Then the next spring, he went again. He rode a mule this time, took him 3 months. He didn't find any gold. He rode back to Ohio. And the third year, then he went out and he found enough gold to buy his 3 daughters 160-acre farms. I said, what determination. How, you know, Ohio to California, that's a long haul. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine doing that. And he could have got bit by a snake. He could have got attacked by the Indians. He could have had an accident. I mean, what determination did they have back then? That's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It is. I have a picture of my grandfather riding on a horse through his town. That's how they did it back then, you know. But to go that far in a chuck wagon, I mean, I don't want to go that far in a car.
Oh, no. Can you imagine?
So,
but,
you know.
Anyway, he was an interesting character, and I have another great-grandfather that sold horses to Jesse James, and he was a very good horseman. And then he left St. Joe, Missouri, after Jesse was killed and all that, and he moved to Oklahoma, and the last horse he sold was to Will Rogers in the early 30s. Wow. And it was the last horse that Will bought, a horse named Billy Sunday. And he was in Will's funeral. They led him down the street in Will's funeral, you know. Wow. So I thought, what an interesting life that would be, to sell horses to Jesse James all the way to Will Rogers, you know.
I'm telling you, just interesting lives all around, because you really have done so much. I mean, with your music and the movies. Born on the 4th of July. That was a huge movie. And what was that, 1989? That movie came out, or I was thinking it was later than
no,
that.
it was earlier. It was earlier, maybe even 79, wasn't it? Because I was with Sun Records then. It was closer to 1980 somewhere. I don't know exactly, but I was with Sun Records, and they called me on the phone and they said they've taken one of your songs off one of your albums. I did a rockabilly album, and that was one of the songs on there was "Rock Around the Clock." Excuse me, my allergies still hacking away here.
Oh, you're
and
fine.
they said, Rodney, Hollywood called and they want to take one of your songs and put it in Tom Cruise's new movie. And it turned out to be Born on the 4th of July. And I thought, well, that is so neat, you know. Now, before that, I had done a movie. I did Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid with Chris Christopherson and Bob Dylan. And I went and did that movie. I was just an extra. I rode horses. That's all I had to do was ride horses. Being raised on a ranch, I got the job. It paid $35 a day, and I was thrilled to death. It was in the early 70s. And when I got home, my mother said, well, did you tell Bob Dylan and Chris Christopherson that you wrote songs too? I said, no. Are you kidding me? I said, they think I was some kind of idiot. I said, I couldn't write songs like they do. So I said, I kept very quiet. But I did get around them a lot. And Bob Dylan and I became really close during that movie because he didn't want to talk show business. So when we'd stop for a meal, we'd eat, and sometimes he sat down beside me one day, and I just started talking to him about his family. And then every day he'd look me up, and we'd talk about sports, the weather, anything but music. You know, he didn't want to go into that because that's what he did for a living. And I never told him I played bass guitar. I never told him any of that. But anyway, it was a nice deal. And if you go see the movie, you won't know who I am. But if you see James Coburn riding out across the desert, that's me. That's not James Coburn.
Okay.
Yeah, because he didn't want to do those long hauls. You know, none of those stars would go do that kind of stuff. They have extras for that, doubles, you know.
Yeah.
So
and
I did that, and then I got into movies a little more later on and got some nice speaking parts. I was in a movie with, let's see, it was a movie called Possums, and I'm trying to think who all was in it. A bunch of stars were in it, and it was about a high school football team, and I was a radio station manager. So if you ever see the movie Possums on TV, I'm the radio station manager. And I had a lot of lines in it. I'm all the way through the movie, you know. And then I did a movie with Roy Clark and Mel Tillis, and it was called Palo Pinto Gold. And we shot that in San Antonio. It was a Western. And in that one, I'm a magazine reporter. So
I'll have to.
I'm sure you can find.
And
I'm sure you can find them in the Walmart cheap rack. I'm sure that's where you'll find one of those DVDs. You know.
Cheap rack.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just amazing, though. And then Hee Haw. I grew up watching Hee Haw, and to have. I mean, that's like an iconic show. And
you know, I did Hee Haw for 13 years, and the first time I was on it, there's 36 million people watched Hee Haw. Now, that's way bigger than about any television show today has, because there's so many more TV channels, of course. But
yeah,
we did Hee Haw, and I went back to the dressing room. Roy had us sing, I performed a song, and he said, "Rodney, your life will be changed now. For the rest of your life, it'll be different." And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Yeah." He said, it'll be different. Well, when I got home, I couldn't go shopping with my wife because people would say, "Hey, I've got this daughter that dances or sings. Can you get her on Hee Haw?" Or, "I got this kid that plays guitar. Can you get him on Hee Haw?" And I said, guys, I'm not a booking agent or manager. And I said, Roy Clark got me on. I don't even know how he did that, you know. And then as we did it more and more, we were on it 13 years, it got so bad that people would come to our door and knock on the door, and I'd go to the door, and here would be a band, a bluegrass band, all dressed up in their fancy shirts and playing bluegrass on my front porch. And it got to where I'd have to, one day I was in bed asleep, and this guy, an Indian, a Sioux Indian, full dress with a war bonnet and buckskins and beads on his thing and everything, and he was a preacher. And he came to the door and he said, "Is Rodney here?" And my wife said, "Well, he's in bed asleep." And he just went right around her, right through the house, into my bedroom. And I'm laying there asleep, and something shakes me. And I open up my eyes, and it's this Indian guy with his war bonnet on looking down at me. And he said, "Have you found Jesus yet?" And I thought, I'm just about to. He scared me to death. And I had to ask him to please leave. I said, "Sir," I said, I've been trying to get a little sleep, and please leave. Well, he finally left.
Yeah,
but it got that bad, and I had a ranch up in Kansas, and it was my dad's old place, and Roy Clark and his wife would come up, and we'd go horseback riding, and they kept their horses up there. And one day, one of the horses bucked Roy off and broke his arm, and we had to take him to the hospital and everything. Well, of course, the press picked it up, and it was on the news and everything. And I was gone one time, and this family drove in from Iowa into our driveway, and my wife was there, and she came to the door, and they said, "Is this where Roy Clark got bucked off the horse?" And she said, "Yes." Said, "Well, is Roy here?" And she said, "Well, no." And they said, "Well, is the horse here?" And she said, "Well, yes, but he's out in the pasture." And they said, "Well, is Rodney here?" And he said, "No." And they said, "Well, can we just take a picture of you?" And she said, "Would you please leave?" But it was just, my life did change. You know, I couldn't go shopping with my wife. I had to stay in the car. And if she went in any kind of a shopping mall. I had to stay in the car because if I didn't, they didn't necessarily want to talk to me as much as they wanted to know if they could get somebody on Hee Haw. That was their main thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I had to live with that, and now that's, of course, that's kind of died down now that Hee Haw is off and everything. But I do cherish those years, and the family of Hee Haw was wonderful. I don't know how, but those 50 or so people all got along like you wouldn't believe. It was just a wonderful, happy time. Yeah. I think it was that we didn't see each other all year. We taped Hee Haw the month of June and the month of October. So we just saw each other twice a year, and we were glad to see each other, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will ask, well, what about those Hee Haw honeys? Those Hee Haw honeys were ladies. They weren't any way out of line at all. Most of them had husbands or boyfriends, and they were just nice ladies. I used to play tennis with, the guys would all be out playing tennis, Roy's band, and here would come Linda Thompson. She said, can I play tennis with you guys? Nobody wants to play. And I said, sure. So one of us had sat out and let her play, you know. But we got along like brothers and sisters. And it was a very clean show, and it was a very clean show off stage, too. And it really made me feel good to go there. It was just a great program, you know.
It really was. I grew up on it. And speaking of growing up on things, because I do want to get to some of your music, and you speaking of not telling Christopherson and Dylan that you wrote songs.
I couldn't.
But you recorded You Could Have Heard a Heartbreak before Johnny Lee did. And I love your version.
He covered me. He covered me, and I thought, my song was taken off. Well, you know, that's just the way it is. He probably didn't have a thing to do with that. It's probably the record company did that, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. And I'll tell you another thing that was funny during those days. I had written a song for Waylon Jennings called Something's Wrong in California. And we did a show together. And I'm in the opening act, and Waylon's the closing act. And so we're sitting around backstage having a Coke and eating a hamburger. And Waylon said, Rodney, I'm not going to sing your song. And I said, well, that's okay. And I said, but could I ask why? And he said, I hate it. I said, you hate it? Well, why? He said, I had the flu real bad the day I cut that song. And he said, every day when I had to sing it, I'd always remind me that I had the flu when I sang it. So he said, I quit singing it. I said, well, that's all right. He said, you got your checks, didn't you? I said, oh, yeah, I got paid good. But I thought,
so he got it recorded. That was the important part.
That's right. You know, the way it was, I was in Nashville, and I wrote this song, and Harlan Howard called me on the phone. He said, hey, I think I can get that song cut for you. And he said, I think Waylon will cut it. I said, at that time, Waylon in the 60s was like George Strait in the 80s. You know, he was the guy, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I was home, and the phone rang, and Waylon's on the other end, and he said, something's wrong in California. And I thought, oh, my gosh. He said, I'm going to cut your song. And I said, oh, wonderful, you know. So
that is wonderful. And I tell you, we have so much in common that we can discuss, because I have some upcoming shows myself with Wade Jennings, his grandson. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's amazing what a small world it is. But you also, you know, you're an inductee at the Oklahoma Country Music Hall of Fame. And Oklahoma Music, I think it's just called Music, because there's rockers in it. There's rockers in it, too. And I'm in the Kansas Music Hall of Fame. Okay. I'm in the Kansas and Oklahoma. Okay. Yeah, I've only got 48 more to go. 48 more, that's it. Yeah. Well, I could see you getting them. I know. You know, I've had a great career, and I tell you what, I made a nice living. You know, I have no gripes at all, and I met some wonderful people. And as a poor boy, I got to go around the world and see places I would never have seen. You know, I wouldn't know where to start. But some real pretty things, like I played for Princess Caroline's birthday party in Monte Carlo.
just a palace, just beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that. I worked for Ronald Reagan at the Republican convention. He hired my band to play music for his parties, you know. So, you know, it was a nice deal.
It is amazing. The people you meet, that's, you know, some of the best parts of playing music, because it is a passion. You're right. It's not about the money you make.
And if you don't love it, you should not be in it. You know, and I've seen people that act like they hated to play. I said, if you don't love every note, I said, here's what I tell them. I said, do you realize that when you get up there and play music and you touch someone's heart out there in the crowd, for a little while, you get to rub elbows with the angels. And nobody gets to do that very often, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an honor and a blessing. It really is.
A big, you know, and God made music. You know, God made music. You know, people say, well, you only should do music in church. I said, I don't know about that, because a lot of people in the Bible that were going to war would have, like, I remember Saul would have David play the harp for him when he's getting ready to go to war. And then later on, when he got jealous of David, he started throwing spears at him when he started playing the harp. So, no, music can be used for many things. Music is the salve for a sore soul. If you've got your heart broken, sometimes a little music helps. If you're real disappointed about something, music can help.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got the blues, you want to hear the blues, you know?
Yes,
because it kind of gets you through. But music's really a necessity. It's a necessity, you know.
Let me tell you one of your songs that cheers me up. I wish I had a job to shove. That is so, it's just funny the way, because you wrote that one, correct?
No, I didn't write it.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, you still recorded it,
and I'll tell you a funny thing about that. I had I recorded the song, and Dan Rather in New York City, he was the anchor man for CBS News, heard it, and I get a call from CBS News out here in Tulsa, and they want to do a story I made. They flew a crew out here, and Dan Rather interviewed me on CBS News about that song. And then that night, as soon as I got off that interview, I hopped on a jet airplane and flew to L.A. and did it on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. I said, what a day. Guys, I can't believe I'm on CBS News and then the Tonight Show, you know.
That's amazing. I mean,
and I tell you what, I was a little nervous on the Tonight Show because, you know, I'd sung on Hee Haw and I'd sung on the Grand Ole Opry, but you're among friends there.
Right.
When you're doing the Tonight Show, you're singing for the city folks. It's a little different deal, you know. But anyway, it was a very nice day for me, you know, to have that kind of day.
It's just so cool to hear these stories. That's why I love to do these interviews, and I feel like I get so much wisdom from them. I mean, you also work with two of my favorites, Jerry Lee Lewis and Wanda Jackson.
Yeah, and they got me in the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. And it was because of working with those two, you know. And I was with Jerry Lee Lewis back when he just married his cousin, his 13-year-old cousin. And boy, it was really kind of a turmoil when you go out and play because there were people that were angry, and Jerry was angry, you know, and it was so funny when they would we'd go into a city and they'd say, now, whatever you do, Jerry, don't tear up this piano because we had to rent it. That's the wrong thing to tell Jerry Lee Lewis. He would tear up the piano I thought, don't say that. Just go along, and he might not. But when you say that, he will jump all over it, jump on the keys and just tear it up. And I've seen him reach in there and tear the hammers off the keys and say, I can't play this piano. You all might as well have some of it, and start throwing keys out in the crowd. I go, oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. Just ruin it. But he was an interesting guy. He was very brilliant, but people took him as some kind of a wild man, but he was a brilliant man. Oh, he still is. I guess he's still alive. He is a brilliant man.
Yeah, he is.
And Wanda Jackson
was she's still,
when she was doing Let's Have a Party in her shimmer little dresses, and she would start shimmying, and I'll tell you, the crowd would just go, those guys would go crazy, and she was really, really talented and a pretty gal. She dated Elvis Presley, and just a legend. But as she's grown older, she is just a true lady, a great woman. She always was a lady, but she's really, just a great person.
Yeah, she is. I've taken a lot of pointers from. I've never had the pleasure of speaking with her or meeting her, but I've taken a lot of pointers from watching her. She really is still.
I tell you, you probably ought to try to get a hold of her, because I think she's kind of gotten off the road, but she's still sitting at home and can do interviews in good shape. She just got tired of fighting that old road, and she could have still done the road, but there comes a time when it's time to quit.
Yeah, I know touring's hard. It's I don't like to leave South Padre Island ever, so it's even harder. On this last trip, I left home and went to Savannah, Georgia. And when I got in there, I had to stay up all night. And after that show, I had the next day off, and I slept 17 hours. I just wouldn't get up, just trying to catch up, Yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard life,
Yeah. You have to have that passion for it. And you've been doing it for so long. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I remember Ernest Tubb, they said he couldn't sleep in the house. He'd have to go out and sleep on the bus, in the bunk. That's the only place I can really sleep,
Because he was so comfortable and had been doing it so long.
And I've known musicians that came home and couldn't sleep, and they had to have their wife put their foot on the baseboard of the bed and shake it like a bus moving along. So they sat there till he got sleep, just bum, 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 to make that thing shake like a bus,
Really?
Just couldn't sleep any other way, yeah.
Wow.
What did you ask me? You said something.
I was going to say, let's talk about, because you did with the Blazers, that was your first, second band, right?
I'll tell you about the Blazers. The Blazers we started in Kansas, and we put out a little record in Kansas, and Johnny Tillotson's manager was driving through Oklahoma, and he heard the record on the radio in Oklahoma City. I had taken copies of the 45 record through both states, Oklahoma and Kansas. Just drove around the cars and dropped them off at radio stations. And he stopped at the music store and bought a copy of it. Back then, you had record shops, and I had put records in all the shops. And he took it to L.A. with him and was going to have Johnny Tillotson record it. It was a song called Teenage Cinderella. And it was one of those doo-wop songs, do-do-do-do-do, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I know it.
Anyway, he was next door to Dory Records. His office was. Now, Dory Records had Jan and Dean and a couple of other acts like that. And they had an adjoining door in the back part of their businesses, and that's where their two offices were. And they opened that adjoining door, and Lou Bedell was over in Dory Records, and he heard that record. He said, "What do you got there?" And the guy that managed Johnny Tillotson, I forget his name, he said, "I found this record in Oklahoma," and he said, "I think it's a hit." And he said, "I'm going to get Johnny Tillotson to cut it." And he said, "Well, let me see that thing." So he looked at it. Lou Bedell looked at it, and me, just being a dummy, I put my phone number on the record. I didn't know. I was 20 years old. And he memorized my phone number and gave the guy the record back and went in the office and closed the door and called me. And he said, "I want you to come." He said, first of all, he said, "Do you have the master of that song?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want to put it out on Dory Records with some of my Jan and Dean stuff." And he said, "Would you send it to me? We'll make a deal." And I said, "Okay." So he put it out nationwide, and it became number one, like in Phoenix Arizona, Philadelphia, Fargo, North Dakota, different places. But it got on American Bandstand. And then he said, you need to come out here and we'll record some more rock and roll. So we went out there, and then we started touring up through the United States, all over the United States. And at that time, we started opening for acts and playing for some bigger acts. And I did a battle of the bands with Bill Haley and the Comets for like a month. And we worked the Peppermint Lounge in New York City back when the Peppermint Twist was popular and all that. And I did a battle of the bands with Joey D and the Starlighters. That was in fact, they're the ones that got us in the Peppermint Lounge. So we had, it just kind of took off and did some things. We had a mixed group. We had the 2 black guys and 3 white guys. And they were our brothers. They were our buddies. And when we went to the south part of the United States, it was really tough on us. We couldn't eat in the restaurants, and they said, those black guys can't come in. And so they said, you guys come in. I said, no, we're not coming in there and leaving our friends in the car. I said, can we eat around in back? Will you bring the food out the back door? And that's what we'd do. We'd go around the back of the restaurants, and they'd bring the food out to us. We couldn't stay in a motel. We had to... the white guys would go in the motel, and the black guys would duck down in the back seat. And we'd rent like a couple of rooms. And then when we got the keys, we'd go out and drive. We always told them, so we want to stay around in back. So we'd stay in the back part of the motel where nobody'd hardly see us. And as soon as we got around there, the black guys would sneak into the rooms. And it was embarrassing on them, and it was embarrassing on us to be treated like that, because they were really good guys. They were very clean and neat and very good people, and it was just a tough time. And I was so thankful when that kind of got better. It kind of got better, and Martin Luther King helped a lot, and it wasn't so bad. And I'm sure there's some of it still today, but it's not near as bad as it was back in those days, So
yeah, I can't imagine really how they felt, being there.
Well, they were embarrassed. They were very embarrassed because, see, we weren't racist when we drove along the car together, laughing and joking and talking, and then we'd be faced with it again when we got out of the car. And we even had clubs where we would play, and there was a white strip painted down the middle of the dance floor. And I walked in this place, and I said, well, what's the white strip for? And he said, well, that's blacks on one side and whites on the other. And I said, you're kidding me. I said, well, now, we've got a mixed band. Does that white strip run up on the stage? And he said, don't get smart with me. Just play the gig. But it offended me, that those guys, when they were on the stage, they were loved and cheered for because they were great musicians. When they climbed off that stage, it was back to that again. Real tough times, But I tell you what, it did me a lot of good in a way, because I can see both sides, And I tell you, today, honestly, I loved everybody. I don't like what everybody does, but as human beings, I love everybody. I don't like some of the enemies of America, what they do, but as human beings, I've got to love them because God loves them. God loves everybody, and but you don't have to love what they're doing.
And that's
kind of hard to explain. I know.
No, actually, I think I will probably remember that forever. You telling me.
There you go.
Because, you do love it. You have to love everybody, but you don't have to like what they're doing. I
tell you what, too, and it's a lot easier to love everybody than it is to hate everybody or hate even one person. That takes work to hate.
Right.
And you end up being very unhappy yourself, and just let it roll and love everybody.
Absolutely.
And you once you find yourself not getting squabbles a lot, somebody's in a bad mood, you say, well, they're in a bad mood. I've been there, We all have bad days.
Yeah. We are just so much alike. I wouldn't be surprised if we were related somewhere.
Well, we could be kin folks, you know. Now, I tell you what, I'm one of those guys, I kind of choke up whenever the national anthem is being played. I still get a lump in my throat. I don't know if you do or not, but
yes,
I do.
Sir,
I get
I do.
And if somebody starts singing God Bless America, I can't hardly get through it. You know, I'm like, oh, man. You know, I love America, you know, and I love the people in it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you're the same thing, you know.
Same way. Ever since I was a little girl, and it used to embarrass me that I'd get a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
You know, I have to freeze up because I felt like nobody around me did that. But
and you know what I've always thought? I thought, you know, if all of our nations all over the world played a musical instrument or sang, and instead of getting together and having these big squabbles and talks of war, if they all got together and had a jam session, a big festival, and they all played music or sang, you know what? They go, you know, maybe things aren't quite as bad as we thought. Maybe we can work this out.
Yes,
you know,
another reason, like you said, the world needs music.
That sure does. It sure does.
And I know Frank will probably, if he hasn't already, spun 7 Days Come Sunday, and you had a lot of success with Walk Softly on the Bridges, I know. I
love those songs. You know, those songs, I got a chance to pick those songs, and they really touched me. You know, Mel Street, of course, was the writer of Walk Softly on the Bridges, or he sang it. I'm sure he probably wrote it. And 7 Days Come Sunday was the guy that wrote Could I Have This Dance for the Rest of My Life. He wrote that too. Bob, well, I can't remember his last name now. He passed away, but what a great songwriter, you know.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know he had written that song, so that's
Yeah.
Well, you've done just about. We could make this interview last for probably the whole day.
Well,
I know that we can't do that, so I'm gonna have to close us out here. But you have accomplished just about as much as any one man could accomplish in a lifetime. So I hope that you realize that. And
I will tell you, I'll wrap it up with this. My best accomplishment is I've been married to the same woman since I was in my 20s, and I love her to death. Karen is her name, and she's the best mom and wife a guy could ever expect. We've got two grown boys, and they're both married and got happy families, and they're all Christians. They're all good people, you know, and so that to me is made me very wealthy, is having a good family. You can't be richer than that, can you?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I agree there too. I've been married 20, going on 21 years now. So.
Well, isn't that great? Well, I got you beat. I'll be married 56 years next month.
You got me beat for sure.
But we were married, you know, when we were kids, you know, and you think, man, you know. But if you've got it that long, you're gonna last, you know, because you love them through and through, you know.
Yeah, you do, and it's a commitment, you know. It's a commitment.
Sure, it's a commitment. You know, when you stand up there and take that vow, you're taking that vow to God. You're saying, I promise to stay with this person for better or worse, you know, sickness and in health.
Well, you know, Rodney, you and I will definitely talk some more, and maybe even do some more interviews soon for the listeners. But we will definitely talk some more. And
if you find a place for us if you find a place for the Tulsa Playboys to play down there, give us a shout, and we'll come down and do some Bob Wills for you. There's 9 of us. It's a big band. It's got horns and all that, so it's like Bob Wills. It's a big band, you know.
Well, you bet. Yeah, I will see about if I can get that accomplished one of these days.
There you go.
I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
We can come down and say howdy.
It would be great. Yeah. All right. Well, it has been an honor and a pleasure, Mr. Rodney Lay. And
well, thank you, Amber.
You have a great day, and we're going to spin some more of your music, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, hon. Bye-bye.
All right.